It's funny, man, because one of my favorite shows or favorite movies of all time, one of my favorite movies of all time is Friday. And
Yeah.
every now and then that comes on the TV and it starts off for those if you have been living under a rock and haven't seen Friday, Ice Cube, John Witherspoon, rest in peace, Chris Tucker. But it starts off with Craig, aka Ice Cube, talking about being fired on his day off because he was caught on camera stealing boxes, right? Like that's what he was stealing. He was stealing boxes on camera. And Paul Pierce, the truth, the Boston legend himself, Paul Pierce, got his ass fired
Oof.
on his day off
Man.
because the guy was caught on camera not stealing boxes. There was some boxes in the picture, but he was not. He got fired on his day off, man, and that shit is just whack to me. Like, damn, Paul, like you couldn't just wait. You getting fired on your day off?
Yeah.
Damn.
And you think about it, like, I don't know what was going through his head. Like, how do you even say, well, maybe it wasn't like he got caught on video and it got leaked by one of the girls that was there or one of the guys that was there. This man is on his own personal live, just flaunting, a bit of money, a bit of honeys, people doing whatever they want to do. He's entitled to have a good time, but when you're working for Mickey Mouse, man, like, that stuff's just not gonna fly. Like, it's just not gonna fly. But,
Pierce,
talk to him.
truth. How do you get fired, bro, on your day off? On your day off. Come on, Pierce. Let's set the scene for everybody who's been living under a rock for the past 10 days and doesn't know what we're talking about. Paul Pierce, legendary NBA champion, top NBA player during his time, one of the top NBA players during his time. Paul Pierce, the truth, was at his house or condo or wherever he was. Hell, we don't even know where he was, but he decided to pick up his phone and record himself via Instagram Live, having some fun. He had some ladies there. They were in thongs and G-strings and shaking ass and throwing money. It was a nice party, and he had some drinks. He had him a nice fresh rolled blunt. He was getting his hair cut. I mean, it looked like he was having a good time. But Paul Pierce is employed by ESPN, like you said, Mickey Mouse, Disney. This is a family network, and the truth was clearly faded in this video. I mean, eyes glossed over, smoking big blunts, having liquor. He had the women. Now, apparently, Paul Pierce is married. He's not married. His wife scrubbed her Instagram. I don't know what happened, but what I do know is you and I talked right after we saw this happen, because I was alerted by one of my friends. He was like, yo, go check out Paul Pierce's Instagram. Like, who follows Paul Pierce on Instagram in the first place, right? But he's like, go look at his IG Live, and Pierce is having a good old time. He's got a fresh, much like you, Jay. He's got a fresh chop, fresh haircut in the picture, and his women, it's weed, it's alcohol, and he's just having a good time. And the first thing we were talking about, we're like, he's going to get his ass fired. Like, there's no doubt Paul Pierce is about to get fired. And sure enough, he was fired on his day off because he decided to IG Live a good time. Like, bro, I don't care how good you think you've got it. Like, you had it made, Paul Pierce, and you decide to press record on your phone in that moment. Like, what the hell were you thinking? What was he thinking, bro?
And not even just him, like, what were his friends thinking? Because it wasn't like he was the only person there. You saw, I'm sure, some of his homies or whoever he hangs out with at the party. I mean, I don't know about you. I'm a little bit jealous I didn't get an invite. Like, don't get me wrong. It looked like it was a good time. But to do that, knowing you're employed by, Disney and ESPN, and you got a sweet gig, like, talking about a guy who was, at one point a top 5 player in the league, challenging LeBron every year, won his championship in Boston with Kevin Garnett and Ray Allen, to now, man, like the fall from grace of Paul Pierce. And don't get me wrong, I gotta be real. I'm kind of happy that he's gone. It wasn't like he was the best NBA analyst, but he was making his money. He was making good money at ESPN, being an NBA analyst. So why do that? And you see this from time to time. And is it arrogance? Is it, I've made enough money, I don't care what happens? Like, where do you think his head was at? Because, like you said, women, liquor, weed, like all this stuff that, maybe a little bit of alcohol here or there, but man, just to be out there like that, I don't know, man.
Yeah, I don't think I think he was loaded. He was clearly drunk and high, so his head wasn't in the right space, right? And I do think sometimes people in positions of power, whether you are a star athlete or a CEO of a company, the president of a business, the supervisor at a job, I think sometimes people take advantage of that power in thinking, even for a small moment, that they can't be touched. Whether that's, we see that in the workplace, the way that some supervisors or managers talk to employees, some things that they say, this passive aggressive, behavior towards, maybe it's women, maybe it's men, if it's a woman in that role. We see this thing play out where there's this inferior, like this superiority complex that I can get away with whatever because of my status. And it was like, there was no doubt in my mind Pierce was going to lose his job after this. Now, apparently he was on TMZ the other day, or, some of the paparazzi caught up to him and he was like, big things coming for the truth, big things coming. Like, I ain't even worried about it. I ain't sweating it. Bro, unless, we don't know the details of that contractual situation, but you had a gig with ESPN, my guy. Like, I don't know how much better it's going to get for you than that. But I do think it's a part of that, man. It's this thinking that you can get away with whatever. And then in the moment of intoxication, it's not thinking. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly. And that's what it comes down to, is just, even no matter where you're at, no matter what your status is, like, you just can't be doing that. It doesn't matter if you're a high-level employee or not, because a lot of companies, they do even have some screening for drug testing and things like that. Like, you need to be mindful of everything you do, especially when we talk about social media. Because someone like Paul Pierce, the moment he went on live, there's women saying, oh, aren't you married? Like, bro, what are you doing? Yeah. Like, and you can see that if you actually watch the video, all these comments, people are like trying to, kind of tell him like, yo, like, get off this right now. And then the next day, probably not even 4 or 5 hours later, I'm like, this dude's fired for sure. After I watched the whole video, I'm like, there's no way he's not fired. And I think it was, 2 days or so, and then you see ESPN PR comes out, but the memes though were hilarious. Man, I saw one of it was like Rachel Nichols when he sees Paul Pierce at ESPN, like gets up and moves tables when she's eating and stuff. Yeah. Oh my God, I was dying. And that was before he got fired.
Well, somebody said in the comments, like while I was actually going down, it was just like, where's Rachel Nichols? Like somebody commented, where's Rachel Nichols? And it's like, it leads to a bigger topic of social media and how, we in particular as fantasy analysts who, we get paid through what we post, right? We get paid because of fantasy football. We are, contract employees for certain companies. And I think, it speaks bigger volumes to how people conduct themselves on social media. And I think a lot of times, if you don't have your real face on your Twitter or your real face on, Facebook, it gives you this freedom to kind of say and do whatever the hell you want. But when you type in RayGQue or Ray Garvin on like Google or Twitter, like my name pops up, right? So employers, potential employers, like they can type up, like search and see what I've said and what I'm posting and the type of content that I'm disseminating to people. So I try to be very mindful of what I say now, and when I was a bit younger, I was a lot more reckless and said a lot more stupid stuff. But as you get older and mature, you try to, like, you've got to be mindful of the stuff that you post because you never know who's watching. you never know who may see that, and you don't know how down the line that may impact you from future employment or potential growth. Like, I just think a lot of times, we look around the social media platform and people aren't very mindful about what they say and, how they say it and how they interact with people. But I definitely think it's something that, people who are trying to build a brand and create content have to be more mindful over what they say. Now, on the flip side of that, as you grow and you get bigger, you do get a little more leeway, right? To just like if you've built your brand and reputation on being just the loud, obnoxious kind of character, then you may get away with a little bit more than those who are more conservative and reserved. But ultimately, man, you just listen, like you never know who's watching or how the things that you tweet or post can really come back to impact your life. So you have to be super mindful of that stuff, man.
Yeah, and I think it's funny that you mentioned someone who Googles your name, because that's one problem I don't have as much, because there's European football players that have my name. There's actually a football player that got drafted to the NFL with my name. Unfortunately, he doesn't have social media, but this is a lesson that I remember you and I went over. I want to say it's probably about 6 months ago now, maybe a little bit longer than that, maybe almost a year. When we started Destination Devy and you were starting to build your brand and getting a lot of traction and all of that, you had to kind of call me and be like, hey, Jay, like, I just need to have a conversation with you man to man about the business and say, look, you can say whatever you want for the most part, but there's certain things that I need you to just be mindful of before you say them. And I think you said that to me twice, and it's funny that you haven't said it since. So hopefully I'm doing things better and I'm doing things the right way. But I just wanted to kind of point that out to the audience that we all have to be mindful of this. And it took you reminding me that we're building a brand together and in our own ways apart as well, that we need to treat ourselves like a business and conduct ourselves that way. And whether it's catering to our audience or not, we still have to be respectful and mindful of the things that we say out in that space, because we don't know who's watching and we don't know when one of those things may resurface later and ultimately tarnish our reputation, right? And so for that, I have to tell you, man, I'm thankful for that, because that was something that you did teach me early on when we started building this brand, and it's something I've carried with me to this day.
Yeah, and we've seen it in the space that we interact in more so than not, the fantasy space, where so it's like people turn on you real quick, man. I mean, you can be kind of blackballed from this very tight industry. Those of you watching who aren't familiar, like the fantasy network is very, very small. Like everybody knows somebody. If they want to do a check on who Ray is, this person can ask this person can ask that person. And if your reputation is, being a jackass, if your reputation is being derogatory towards women or people of color, or whatever the case may be, disabilities, homophobia, if that's sort of your MO, like no one's going to work with you, man, and no one's going to pay you. No one's going to hire you. You're just going to be just this figure on Twitter that tweets away and never makes any cheese. So it's something that not only you had to be mindful of, I still do. And that's why I really try hard not to let the trolls really infiltrate my space, right? And really knock me off of my game to say something crazy. Like I curse from time to time. I talk about things that are happening in the world that affect me, social justice, change, racism. I will speak out on those things. Like if that's not going to stop me from getting a job, but I've seen some people say some pretty nasty things towards women, towards people with disabilities. And it's one of those things where, again, you have to be mindful. And if you're hiding your face behind a keyboard, maybe you never have to think about those things. But for those of us who have a brand, who have a YouTube channel, who have a Twitter following, who have whatever it is, some sort of pathway to earn income through content creation, we do have to be mindful of the things that we say, because like you said, man, you never know when that stuff can flip back and really start to harm you. And I don't want anything messing up the bread. So I ain't finna do that shit, man. Like I'm not gonna do it now. Something that I want to talk about, man, is something that happened in the music culture world over like the past couple of days, man. But it's been about a week, and it's the passing of DMX. Earl Simmons, legendary rapper, man, somebody that I grew up listening to, and I know, Jordan, you and I have talked about our age difference, and we haven't talked to the people yet. This is only episode 2. We haven't really talked to the people yet about how we grew up as black males, because we'll dive into that. It was very different for the both of us, but DMX was a huge part of my culture. I remember being in the 7th grade and being on the bus, riding to our JV football games, man. We're riding the bus. I've got my Discman, and if you had a CD player that had shock resistance, that way every time the bus hit a bump, your CD didn't skip, you were like the cool kid, right? Like, it wasn't no Beats by Dre. You just had these cheap ass headphones. You hope that you had like an anti-shock Discman, and I'm playing Flesh of My Flesh, Blood of My Blood. I've got that CD jamming. I've got It's Dark and Hell is Hot. Like, I had these DMX CDs because that's what got me going. Like, I grew up listening to Earl Simmons, and his passing, man, it took me back to those days in my early childhood, getting hyped up, getting ready for football games. And, we had this conversation. We were talking about topics for the show. You and I were talking, we were like, should we talk about it? Should we not talk about it? But I think there are a lot of things that take away from these situations every time they happen with famous celebrities, right? Whether that's DMX, whether that's Paul Walker when he passed away, whether that's Kobe Bryant. Think about Nipsey Hussle. I got the victory lap. I represent, I love Nip. Nip's on my wall. He's very, very influential to me. I'm blessed that I got to see him in person before his passing. But we talked about this together, man. We always praise and recognize people the most when they pass away, right? We don't really, we're putting flowers on graves and not giving somebody flowers to their face, right? We're telling, Kobe Bryant how much we love him and appreciate him now, but prior to his death, we weren't saying that, it's just Kobe's dope. And now with DMX, 2 weeks ago, nobody was thinking about DMX. Nobody, not even me. And then he passes away, and it's like, oh my God, DMX is just earth-shattering news in the music culture world. Now, I want to kick it to you real quick. Just how much of a DMX fan were you? I mean, growing up in Canada, a little bit younger than me. I don't did he play any kind of role in your musical upbringing?
For me, unfortunately, not really. I've heard, some of the famous songs, but beyond that, part of it too was just my growth going through my younger days. Like, you're talking about grade 7, based on our age difference, I would have been, grade 1, grade 2. So I wasn't out here listening to DMX when I was that age. I was still bumping that Mary J. Blige, the Backstreet Boys, all that stuff, that young music. So I wasn't quite up to DMX yet. But as I grew a little bit older, I got familiar with his music and other music of older hip hop artists, whether it be Tupac, Biggie, Ice Cube, NWA, all that stuff. And we've had our own disagreements on music before, and we won't get into that here. But I think, like you said, it's really important to understand, and at least from me, learning more about DMX throughout the years, and as well educating myself more about him in his days leading up to his passing, was so many people talked about how real he was and how authentic he was and how he had his troubles and he owned up to that. And what I learned more than anything is and something that I bring with me as well, is how being authentic is great. It's a great way to just show people who you are as an individual and not try and hide that you may have doubts, not try and hide that you may have flaws. And that's one thing that we talk about a ton, so much individually, just how no matter what's going on, we're there for each other. And I think it's so important because we look at Paul Pierce and the people he surrounded himself with in that moment, they weren't there for him, right? But DMX is someone that really encouraged that support system. And while we didn't know what was going on with him, obviously his family and the ones close to him knew of his struggles, but there's only so much you can do for that individual. And like you are for me, I'm there for you as well. Whenever you're going through stuff, we always talk about it, whether it's your mental health, content creation, burning out. All these things are at the forefront of today's society, and being aware of people's mental health and what's going on with them is just, I think this is just another example of where it's so important to check in on your people, make sure they're okay, and not just ask them if they're fine, but actually ask them what's going on in their life, how they're doing, and how they're handling everything that's going on.
Yeah, man. And, the details aren't out as to exactly what the cause of death was or what, substances may or may not have come into play to expedite, that situation, or to bring this situation on. But from everything that I've read or heard, it was an overdose. Not sure quite what, but I mean that hits home for me, big time, because one of my best friends growing up, I mean, we literally have the same tattoo, tatted on us. He passed away over of an overdose. You know what I'm saying? And it's one of those things, man, where it, like, we really, and I know it's easier said than done, but it's really not that difficult to do. But it's checking in with the people that you care about and you love, right? Like, and I know we can't call every single family member, every single friend every day. Like, we can't do that, man. Like, I mean, you can, but you'd spend all day on the phone, and then you're just doing it every day, and it's not really genuine. But it's important to check in on folks, man, to check in on your boys, to check in on friends. If you've got a thought like, man, I haven't talked to such and such in, 2 years, man, I wonder how he's doing. I wonder how she's doing. Reach out, check in, when we talk. Like, yo, how are you doing? Like, hey, man, you sound down today. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, even before we started the show, I was like, hey, you good, man? Like, you sound like you hurt, like, low on energy. But it's little things like that, man. And that's why I do appreciate the power of social media, because whether it's a quote that you tweet out or something that you say in a podcast that you may just be just saying and not thinking anything of it, and somebody else sees it, reads it, hears it, and they're like, yo, that little line that you said, I heard it, and it like changed my whole vibe for the whole day. Like, I was super down, and you posted this quote, or you said this on a show, Ray, and it completely changed my day. Like, thank you. Like, that's dope. That's the power of where we are today. Like, and we're not any kind of big name stars. We're not on national TV. We're just two guys, like, sharing our story, creating content, having fun. But even in something as insignificant as fantasy football, as insignificant as us getting on here and joking about Paul Pierce, being open and vulnerable and talking about, man, like, damn, man, like, having troubles with my girlfriend, or me and the wife going through it, or, I'm just beat down, bro. I can't record tonight. The kids they're not doing well. I'm not feeling well. Like, we have to check in on people now while we're alive. That way we're not going to see them and saying, I wish I would have, when they're no longer here.
Yeah, no, and that's a huge point, right? And I think even for me, I don't have as much going on as you, but the amount of times you've been like, oh man, these kids, man, they're driving me crazy. And then we may joke around because I just laugh at you, and you tell me one day I'm gonna be laughing on your end. But I think it's really important. And I'll just share like a quick personal story of mine. When I finished college, I graduated, but I was like in a really bad place at the time. And I remember I got dragged to a concert in Toronto. I went to go see Rally Ritchie. He's most people don't know who he is, but he plays Grey Worm in Game of Thrones, and he's actually like a really good singer too. And so I went to go see him in Toronto. It cost me like $20. But when I say that dude's like positivity, outlook on life, the admiration I had for his music, and just being there in that moment, like, I think about that moment all the time. Like, that, just being present in that moment, something about it told me that I just needed to make a change in my life and be a different person. And it's weird to kind of reflect on that. And I've told you other stories about, like, I just have really weird days. Like, I may have 3 or 4 months of like monotony, but then one day just comes along and like 3, 4, 5 things cascade, and all of a sudden I feel like I'm living a completely different life than I was that day. And at least for that day in particular, I was just, for whatever reason, I had a really bad day, really bad, honestly, year and just finished college and wasn't feeling too great about myself. But something about that day, that moment, being present, hearing his voice, the positivity that he spread throughout that entire room, it just changed. In a lot of ways, it felt like it changed my life. But I think, like you're saying, you really just want to reach one person. If you can even reach one person, whether it's every day, once a month, once in your entire life, you've made a difference in this world, in that person's life. And you can't put a price on that type of power and what that positivity can spread throughout the universe, or the internet world, or the podcast world. Just spreading that love, that joy is so important. And it's something that I try to do myself. Like I said, this moment for me at that concert was in some ways transformative, and I want to pass on that to other people, and try and give them that same feeling, or even just some of that. Right, that to me is enough.
Yeah, man, and Earl Simmons, DMX had a lot of demons, man. If you go read a story, there's some things when you talk about growing up in horrible situations, growing up poor. Like I read a story, man, that they were so like down and out, so poor, so just at the bottom. Like he and his siblings would actually like drink their mother's perfume because they were just so like they had nothing, man. Like this dude
Wow.
came from the mud and became one of the biggest rappers in the world. There's a video apparently from Woodstock 98, 99 where it looks like he's got the whole world in the crowd just rocking to the Rough Riders anthem. You know what I'm saying? Like that type of global reach, and back then social media was non-existent. There was no Twitter, there was no Facebook, there was no YouTube. So when you hear DMX, like don't get it twisted. This dude was like the Jay-Z of his time. Like he was doing movies, he was doing music, he was doing everything. Like X was that dude. So, the fact that this unfortunate situation came about, speculation here, substance abuse or whatever, like, you never know what people are going through, man. So just reach out while we're alive, reach out while we're here. Because it's much better to tell somebody that you love them while they're alive than at a tombstone. But so let's switch gears. Let's get off of it. Let's get off of let's switch.
Right.
Let's switch gears. Let's switch gears and wrap this thing up on some like I guess positivity, but it's about to be negative because I'm so sick. Like I'm so ready for the NFL draft to get here, and I'm so ready more so than anything for the number 3 pick to come and go because.
Yeah.
Every time I open up Twitter, the only thing people are talking about is why San Francisco should not draft Alabama quarterback Mac Jones. And I have been a Mac Jones supporter since last September. I was like, yo, this dude's going to be a first-round pick. People thought I was crazy when I said he's going to be a first-round pick. That's all I've ever said. All I've ever said was Mac was going to be a first-round pick, and he's a lot better than people are making it seem. I cannot speak for the ineptitude of the San Francisco 49ers trading all those picks to move up to number 3 and potentially, we don't even know if they're going to draft Mac Jones. We don't know what's going to happen, man. Right? Like we're arguing about something that hasn't even happened that may or may not happen. But just your thoughts on San Francisco making the move and potentially drafting Mac Jones and seeing this everywhere, sports media, social media, it's everywhere, bro.
It is easily the most annoying story in sports right now. Like it's so played out. Like for me, I don't care that they want to take Mac Jones. Like I don't care at all. I get if you think that Justin Fields is a better quarterback. Okay, cool. But then like go and buy a football team or go become a GM and you can draft him. But if the 49ers believe that Mac Jones is their quarterback, maybe we don't believe it. Maybe we think Trey Lance is better. Maybe we think Justin Fields is a lot better. I just don't get it. I don't get the debate. Like maybe 49ers fans are mad they traded all these picks. But at the end of the day, if they want to take Mac Jones, as far as I'm concerned, Justin Fields may go to a team that actually wants him, which is what I want for Justin Fields. I don't appreciate some of the things that have been said about him. But as far as Mac Jones going to San Francisco, like that isolated story, why does everyone care so much? Like, I don't know what the difference is in contract situation and things like that, but it's maybe a couple million. Justin Fields is probably going to get $30 million. Mac Jones may get $33 million, depending on where he gets drafted. I don't know. To me, I want these teams to take who they want. They're the ones running. They're the ones getting paid. They're the ones doing all these things, doing the scouting. I'm just sitting at my desk watching film. So for me, at least, I don't know. I just can't get into these debates. I get if you want to debate Mac Jones or Justin Fields, who you think is better in a vacuum as a talent. But if they take Mac Jones, they take Mac Jones. Like once that happens, then what's the debate?
Yeah.
It'll just be 49ers fans probably a little bit mad. But other than that, I don't.
Well, the debate could be, and I'm not taking it here, but it could be Sam Bowie over Michael Jordan. It could be...
Oh, it could be.
James Wiseman over LaMelo Ball. It could be, you know what I'm saying? Like, I think as fans of that team, you want to see your team draft players you like. I get it. And let's just be clear. I think we both think Justin Fields is a better quarterback than Mac Jones.
Oh, absolutely.
But
absolutely.
I'm with you. I just think the constant, like, belittlement of Mac Jones as a player is crazy. And we're not going to get into the racial and stereotypical undertones of the Justin Fields like hate or fall opposed to white quarterbacks. We're not going to do that today. We will talk about that. And I have been very instrumental and I've been very vocal about my thoughts on the Justin Fields negativity. I'm just talking about strictly from a team selecting a player standpoint. I'm so tired. I really hope they go
so tired, man.
I hope they go like Penny Sewell or they go some random ass position. Like they're not going to. You don't trade up like that to take a tackle. But I'm so tired of jumping on Twitter and that's all we see. Why they should send that shit to the complaint department in San Francisco. You know what I'm saying?
And that's what's annoying is like it's 1 of 32. Like that percentage of the 49er fans, whatever it is, they're the ones who can talk about it. But why is it all over my timeline of fans of the entire NFL? Like I don't know, man. Like I get people love their fantasy. They want Justin Fields to go to the 49ers because if he doesn't go there, oh, he might suck or oh, it's not a good situation. Like Justin Fields is good. We all know that. So I think wherever he goes, he's going to be good. And if the 49ers want Mac Jones, then so be it. Like I don't know. Like you said, it's exhausting being on Twitter sometimes. Like when you talk about just social media exhaustion.
Yeah.
Twitter can just be the worst. Like, just the worst.
It's pretty damn bad, man. But I'm going to tell you what's even worse than the Mac Jones, Justin Fields takes now is going to be how ridiculously obnoxious I'm going to be when they do, in fact, draft Mac Jones, quarterback out of Alabama. I am going to be the most obnoxious person on the timeline. So I'm just letting y'all know now, mute RayGQue, because when they do that, if that happens, it's going down.
I told y'all, man. That's what it'll be. I told y'all, Mac Jones, first round pick, 3rd overall. Give him that money. Let him run that offense.
Yeah, baby.
I don't know. I can't get on board with that. Like it's honest. It's annoying at this point. It's annoying. But, it is what it is. And this is what Twitter's for. So people can argue about whatever they want. Bro, you're ruining the story. But yeah, I had to cut it twice. The first time, I guess I missed a patch like behind my ear, and it was like right behind my ear. So I legitimately couldn't like see it at all. And so I was in the kitchen. This is probably like 6 or 7 o'clock the next day. And my mom's like, she starts laughing behind me. I'm like, okay, like, what's so funny? Whatever, okay. And then she's like, wait, no, stand there. I'm like, what's up? Like, what are you talking about? And she takes a picture. I'm like, oh, damn, here we go. So she sends me a picture, and it's just like this small little patch right behind my ear. And I was kind of mad, and my family, I'm like, yo, I've been walking around the house all day. Like, no one said anything. Thank God I didn't leave the house, because I legit, like, just had no idea right behind my ear. It was right behind my ear, too, just a small little patch.
You cut your own hair?
Yeah, I've been too lazy for years.
Dude, you look good, man. Like it looks, see, with me, I just got that baldy, so and it's funny because I shaved right before the show, but I feel a spot like in the back or like I can feel it. I'm like, damn, I just missed it a little bit. But
every now and then you got to do it twice, right? Just to make sure it's right. I had to clean up the fade a little bit and all that, but
you look good, man. I saw it when your YouTube video. I watched that today, and it had me all self-conscious. I'm like, this motherfucker talking about people recording from the side, knowing good and well that's how I do a lot of my stuff.
You fixed it, though. You fixed it, so it's fine. He
It's
fixed
a good video. Yeah, I'm going to look directly at the camera from here on out. Connect with my audience.
Yeah.